Welcome back to Wellness with Delaney. Today I'm with Bria Alston. She is a holistic skincare expert. So she focuses on the mind body spirit connection behind skin. Really fascinating. When I found her page, I saw that she uses a spirit led approach to caring for skin. And I was like, hold up, we have to discuss this. How does this work? And how do you integrate spiritual health into skin health? You guys are going to love this episode. We're going to unpack so many amazing just discoveries in having beautiful, healthy skin from the inside out. Bria, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I've been so excited about this conversation, and I was really excited when you reached out and offered me this opportunity to chat with you. So I'm excited to get into it.
Oh, likewise. I think it's so cool. And, as a fellow believer, I believe that it is so important to not compartmentalize our faith, right? Like everything we do can be part of our faith and can be part of our calling. And a lot of people, I don't think, really realize that. So, for you, being in an industry that isn't necessarily considered spiritual to most people, right? In skincare, how do you utilize a spirit led approach in your practice?
Well, I kind of came to a point in my life where I really came to the end of myself. I actually didn't want to live anymore,
Wow.
and so when that happened, it was my faith that saved me. It was God that kind of stepped in and lit up the dark for me. And I realized at that point that there was no place in life for to not have God in. He needed to be involved in every aspect for me to be able to have peace and feel safe and feel secure and be able to heal. And so I just began to welcome that into my treatment room. And when clients would come, it started out praying quietly and just, really as I was massaging the person, just using that time to just be intentional to connect with God myself, to be able to hear what He was saying, what He wanted to speak over whoever was in the bed. And then there came a time where He called me to be a little bit bolder and begin to speak out loud. And as I was obedient to that, I started to see him open up something entirely different. I had been ministering in inner healing and deliverance um, in a separate space, and I saw him begin to bring that into the treatment room. And what's so fitting is that the industry is about beauty. It's about um, I think sometimes can become a little bit vain, but really beauty comes from understanding our God given identity, understanding what our worth is through God's eyes. And a treatment room also is a space where you can get really calm and relax, and your central nervous system can calm down. And that is a great state to be in, to be able to receive and release. And so God just began to use that space to remind his people who they are, what their God given identity is, to release beliefs that were hindering them from seeing themselves that way. And it just became so much deeper than the skin.
Wow, I love that. And I think this really correlates with the power of touch, right? When you're physically touching someone, there is, and I always have the philosophy of the reason why science works is because God created it, right? So everything, whenever I say anything scientific, I'm like, it's because God's perfect design is that way, right? So the oxytocin, that's just that release when someone's gently massaging you or touching you in a way that's just loving and caring. And so, what a unique position where you get to be hands on with people, ministering to them, really filling their soul and their spirit in just a really unique and fresh way. I love this. Do you see, is it typically believers that come to you, or do you do this with non believers as well?
Well, when I started, I was in Dallas. And, in Dallas, there's so many different people and so many different cultures and so many different mindsets. And my spa was not set up as like a Christian ministry. It's just that is my faith, and that's who I am. So people from all different walks of life would come in. And one of the things I think is so misinterpreted about Christians is that, it can be judgmental, but if you're really following Christ, you are a safe place, and I just felt, God just set it up in a way that it really just invited people in and then be able to experience him on different levels according to where they were, to plant seeds. But then as things have evolved, and recently, about 3 years ago, we moved to Mississippi. It's He said, he kind of pruned everything back and made it more of a ministry. And so now I'm seeing people like seeking out that part of it. They're coming for the spiritual, they're coming for the encounter, and they're leaving with better skin too.
That's amazing. I love this so much. And just, yeah, what a special time. I know that I've gotten, a few different kinds of facials, everything from the most relaxing, like nervous system spa, I'm falling asleep on the table, to like painful laser. And it is, I think there's something really special about when you can have that encounter that's just so peaceful. And, facials can be this like pain, beauty is pain experience, or they can be this like truly life giving, nurturing experience. And I think that that's what a lot of women need more than just another treatment that's going to make their skin, glass skin, whatever, but leave them just not feeling good, not feeling relaxed, not feeling at peace. I saw on your Instagram actually that you had posted something about how glass skin, or the pursuit of glass skin, is actually destroying our skin barrier. Is that correct? What do you mean by that?
Well, there's so many of products that can create this glass skin illusion. And, to a trained eye, you can even see it in before and after pictures. There's it, you can, like I said, you can create that illusion of the glass skin, but you leave the treatment room a couple days later, sometimes you see a lot of dermatitis. The skin's
Mm,
actually really irritated from some of the things that were used in treatment. And, I feel like, kind of like those results sometimes are not lasting. That it's the same thing with, like, using the products to get a result versus doing the inner work to bring about the desired healing. And so it kind of just goes between, goes back to, like, are we seeking a quick fix? Are we seeking that overall? Um, and, like I said, so many of the products that are used in the facials that create that illusion are actually doing the opposite, contain fragrances or ingredients that are stripping the skin barrier or leaving, taking away too much of the good bacteria on the surface of the skin. When a lot of, that's just, those are things that our skin needs to remain supple and soft and hydrated and actually prevent aging. Um, so that's what I meant by that, with the chasing the glass skin can be detrimental to the overall skin health. And also to, it's kind of a toxic mentality. It's this seeking perfection through quick results, but they don't last, versus seeking changes that really take root, that change, and then your glow kind of coming from the inside.
mm. Yeah, because I mean, skin is the largest organ of the body. So we can do all the crazy treatments that we want, but if you're not addressing the inner health, you're not going to see that lasting outer result. And I always say, like, true beauty is a reflection of health. We can manufacture it all day long, with injectables, with different treatments, with plastic surgery, but true radiant beauty is a reflection of inner health. And I think that ties into spiritual. For you, do you ever see that, like, somebody might come in with a physical manifestation of something on their skin, whether it's like dermatitis or acne or wrinkles, whatever, but it actually has like a spiritual component to it?
Yes, there's, pretty much anything that you see, there's a spiritual component to it, emotional, and it's usually the thoughts that we're thinking, the things that we're telling ourselves over and over, those ruminating thoughts. For instance, with cystic acne, a lot of times you see a deep-seated anger. It could be towards self. It could be, in childhood, maybe you had a parent in the home that was had a lot of bitterness or a lot of anger, and that kind of, you kind of pick up on those things. We internalize those things, and it can be expressed in different ways. But and everyone's different, everyone's unique, but there is a pattern. There is usually some common ground in specific conditions and the emotions that I see with them. And yeah, it definitely, the skin can be a telltale, organ on of what kind of internal battles we're fighting on the inside.
This is really interesting because you hear a lot about the connection of like the gut or the hormones in cystic acne, right?
Yeah.
But I don't often hear about a spiritual component. And this makes sense too, because I feel like when then you get the cystic acne and you can't get rid of it, you tend to be angry at yourself, right? Like you tend to feel upset. And so it's like this vicious cycle.
Yes, and yeah, it's kind of like then feeling rejection and feeling self-rejection, and it's kind of, yeah, it's a cycle that you tend to stay in. And so it's most important to me when I'm working with someone that we can that we can get peace there in that place, because that's going to make the biggest impact to not only their skin, but their life as a whole. Because these lenses of deception that we're operating through, whether it be anger or, beliefs of low self esteem, whatever it is, they are ultimately stealing from every aspect of our life, because God meant for us to live in abundance. And that comes from knowing our God given identity. And so when that peace can settle in that place where there's been hurt or torment, then you literally watch, that manifest into their physical body, that peace and that healing.
Wow, that is so beautiful. So for someone who comes in and they do have cystic acne for many reasons, right? The physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, what then does your protocol with them look like?
So, it's different with each person, because people are in different places. And, some people, they come in and they're ready to just open up and tell you everything. And some people are very closed off. And typically with people with cystic acne, you find that they're kind of closed off. They want to be able to trust someone, but they need to make sure that they can. Sometimes it starts with the skincare, the regimen, really beginning to clean things out of their diet, clean things out of their lifestyle. I will start planting seeds of how the thoughts are impacting the body from the very start. Usually God will also begin to show me some things, not reading people's mail, but just, allowing me to have some insight and some perspective. And then as that person's ready, begin to approach those deeper roots. And, it does look different with everybody. Some people, you can tell them in the first appointment, hey, this is probably likely. And they're like, oh, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Some people, you have to kind of ease into that. So I always take that into consideration. I use discernment. But typically, it would be, looking inwards. I kind of specialize in the skin, and then also in the spiritual, the emotional. And when things are kind of, I have a background in nursing, and my certification kind of includes supplements and muscle testing and things. So I can kind of get those main things going, making sure that we're getting God given nutrients through our diet and through our supplements. But if there's anything more specific, then I can refer out to someone for more dietary guidance or, exercise. But yeah, it just include the whole being.
Yeah, I love this. And I think this hits close to home. I actually used to really struggle with cystic acne years ago. And God bless, I do not struggle with it anymore. But it was really severe and it was a combination of things. But I remember going into an esthetician and same thing, like I felt like I had to warn them that I had acne, right? Like I didn't trust them. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't want to show up somewhere without makeup on. And it was like, I remember being like, okay, I'm going to come in, but just so you know, like I have cystic acne, being so embarrassed as if I was the first person on earth to ever have cystic acne. And I think that's a really common feeling with a condition where you feel like it's out of control, where it's on your face, where it's painful. You can never really forget it's there. That a lot of people seem to feel like they're the only person on earth struggling with it. And I think that isolation can really be so mentally and spiritually draining for those going through it. So, just from that like spiritual level, do you have any encouragement for the people who are currently in the trenches of their acne journey?
I mean, like you said, it's nobody wants to, kind of be wearing their wounds on their skin, right? And it's definitely a unique condition in that way, because it's not something, like if I want to hide the fact that I have asthma, I don't have to tell you that, right? But with cystic acne, it's right there. So it does, kind of make you feel vulnerable. And what I would say is that really it is sitting in the stillness, in a place of allowing God to really get you into a vulnerable place and really begin to show you all of the thoughts that you're thinking, the things that you're telling yourself that don't align with his truth about who you are, that will begin to not only shift and bring healing in your body, but also make you more confident and comfortable in who you are and where you're at in your healing journey. Because and the truth is that, you know, I have not dealt with cystic acne, but I have worked with enough clients to, to say this, we don't see it the way that you see it. It's acne, and there's people with acne just like there's people with asthma or whatever else. And I know that's difficult, but at the same time, I think just really pressing in. One of the exercises I like to give my clients who are dealing with this is, I say, take your hands, and as a woman, I put my hands on my stomach, my womb, as a man, just on your stomach. And then I begin to take some deep breaths. And in prayer, I'm inviting the presence of the Lord, the Holy Spirit. And then He tells us what we ask for in prayer, we believe, we receive. I will, in the spirit, see his hands on mine, and he just begins to kind of rock and just say, shh, everything's okay, and really begin to calm the central nervous system down. And he's telling me, I'm here, everything's okay. So as everything calms down, and then usually you'll start to feel these emotions rise up, whether it be anger or rejection or just grief, and allow those to come out. Allow them to come out. Allow God to take that stuff from you, and in its place, receive what He gives you, whether that be something visually or a word that He gives you or a scripture that He gives you. But He will speak, and that is how we begin that process of healing and knowing how to get in the presence of God to receive that healing, and that's where everything begins to change.
Wow, I love this. And, I think with healing too, sometimes the hardest thing for people is to accept it and receive it and believe that it's for them. And I see this a lot. I've even experienced this actually, but where, you walk through healing, you're on the other side. Let's say specifically for acne, because I think this is just a really easy illustration. And let's say then you get one breakout or one zit or one thing, you're right. Like you're really
Yeah.
tired, you're on your period, you ate some sugar and it manifests on your face. And then you spiral because you're like, wait, I thought I had healing from this. I'm backtracking. It's going to get so bad again. Oh my gosh. And I see this a lot on the internet from girls who've had acne journeys, being like that feeling when you've been through acne and then you get a breakout. And it's this panic. I think the hardest thing sometimes can be to receive that healing and believe that it's there, even when it's hard to believe that it's there. Do you kind of minister to girls in that when they're kind of getting that panic afterwards?
Yes, and I think it's along that journey, if when you're kind of doing that, sitting in that place, then you learn there that you do have control of your thoughts, that you can take them captive. And in that same place, in that same space, you can know everything's okay. Healing is not linear, right? It's like peeling an onion. And even the healthiest skin has blemishes. There's no such thing as perfect skin. And so, I'm just going through a time in the month that is a little more imbalanced, and just start to kind of calm your thoughts, take those thoughts captive, realign them with truth. Everything's fine. Speak those truths to the lies, and calm yourself back down. That is, and that's essential at all things in all aspects of life. So that's one of the things I love so much about treating the skin or treating the body this way, is like these young girls come in dealing with issues, and we're planting seeds for health and prosperity in every way. It's teaching them how to align their thoughts with truth and speak truth to the lies that our mind so often feeds us, or the enemy so often feeds us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then going into just the products itself, right? So you love oil. I can see on your Instagram that you're a fan of oil.
Yes.
I love oil as well, but I think it can be a kind of a controversial just item in skincare. A lot of people think that oil is going to cause issues in their skin. What are some of your favorite oils and how do you utilize them for beautiful skin?
Well, gosh, I'm kind of a connoisseur of oils. I have so many different favorites. My favorite, one of my favorites will always be jojoba. And then, of course, the most controversial, tallow. I used that for quite a while, even, before it kind of became popular. But the reason being is because that these oils work so well with all skin types. And, I think there has been a lot of fear around oils. But typically, when I see someone who says, "Oh, this oil broke me out," it's not that's not the case. There's more to that story, right? Oils can pull excess oils, dirt, things like from the pores, which can kind of cause some congestion to come out of the skin. When you're transitioning from a moisturizer to an oil, there can be some changes. When you're transitioning from any skincare products, there can be changes. But typically when you kind of detox the skin from uh, a lot of when people have been using a lot of products and you just hand them an oil and give them some hydration, their skin is going to look great. Their skin, and in fact, in my experience, 11 years of doing this, kind of taking people off a lot of products and putting them on very simple regimens, it's been the same thing every time. My skin has never looked this good. It's never felt this good. It's never been more hydrated.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I think so much of that is like a lot of these products that can be commonly used, these retinols and all these really intense products, they might deliver a result in the short term, but they're almost like addictive, right? Like you're not actually getting that inside out healing. And I feel like any product that's also an endocrine disruptor is ultimately going to cause more issues for my skin down the road versus something that's really good for my body. Um, which I want to get into that. But before we do, I wanted to talk about tallow for a second since you brought that up. And obviously, tallow is very controversial in skincare. I see people getting really mad on both sides of the aisle about tallow. And I've even had people on the show who have tallow companies and then people on the show who are super anti tallow for the face. Why does it work for you and your clients? Like, what are you a fan of when it comes to tallow?
Well, what I love about it is that, you know, I love the consistency. One of the things that I like to have in the regimen especially during the winter months, are, I like to have like the liquid oil, and then I like to have something that's a little creamier. Um, and I also have just found that it works so well with so many different skin types. Um, I mean, I've used it in anything from acne to dry skin, across the board, and I've seen it be incredibly beneficial. Um, but I think, you know, honestly, sometimes I wonder the people who are so opposed to it. I'm like, have you tried it though? Have you
Yeah.
actually tried it? Because sometimes people are quick to just judge something or assume it's going to be a certain way. And then I see a lot of arguments that it causes breakouts. It's comedogenic. It's not. It has I think it's like a 0 comedogenic rating. And it's, so I don't know. I think it's just kind of one of those things, like, people, they can argue, they're going to argue. And I think some people, and more in a clinical setting, can be kind of like, oh, I'm doing all these procedures and you're putting tallow on your face. But realistically is that it is a living ingredient and is full of vitamin A and D and vitamin E, and it's so great for the skin. It's got active ingredients, what's just what we're looking for. It keeps the skin hydrated. So, um, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so interesting because I think you're so right that a lot of the people who really hate it have definitely not tried it. I've seen people share like your tallow lotion that you're using or your face cream is so full of bacteria. It's a breeding ground for bacteria. Da, da, da. Is this true?
No, it preserves itself. I mean, I've had tallow and here's the thing with all oil products. If you still have them around after 6 months, I mean, you probably should toss it out. It's depending on, I think some can last for a year, but if it's just been sitting around, you should probably toss it out. But no, it fights off bacteria. It preserves itself. I've used the same jar of tallow for, 4 or 5 months and never had any issues, neither of my clients. I just I don't think that's accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I like this perspective. It's nice to hear somebody practicing with tallow on other people and seeing benefits because I think that that's kind of rare in the esthetician world. I don't see a lot of people in your shoes who are actually using it on different clients and seeing its effects on skin. So when it comes to toxic ingredients, what are some of the most common skincare products or ingredients that people are using that you wish they would throw out right now?
I mean, the main thing is synthetic fragrances. I mean,
Hmm.
you don't the the synthetic fragrances are wreaking havoc on the hormones. Um, but also they're, allergens, they're disrupting the skin barrier. One fragrance label can hide hundreds of chemicals. Um, and then, there's a lot of different preservatives that are used that, there's always the argument of, well, and used in specific amounts, they're okay. But, you see it time and time again, these recalls on skincare that was overheated on the truck, and then it changed the dynamic of the product. And so now it's not so safe. And um, the different kind of microplastics that can be, BPA's, I try to, honestly, and my approach is very different from even most clean organic estheticians, but I try to eliminate as much uh, that's not natural, not living as possible. I feel like the skin is a living organ. And so, therefore, it thrives on living ingredients, just like our body thrives on living ingredients. So, I prefer things that come in glass containers or in packaging that is of natural materials. I prefer things that are preservative free because the skin barrier is made up of bacteria. We need that bacteria to keep the skin supple and soft and hydrated and healthy and keep the skin barrier healthy. And when we're stripping all of that way, that is keeping the skin kind of stuck in this cycle of repair. And so my standard is going to be a little different than even, some, like I said, clean or organic estheticians. But that's what I feel like is the truth.
Hmm.
The truth of taking care of the skin is recognizing it's first a living organ and it thrives with living ingredients.
Wow. Okay, so do preservatives strip like the skin's microbiome?
So when you use a preservative is put in a product in order to keep the skin, I mean, the product on the shelf to keep bacteria from growing. So it doesn't discriminate. It kills both good and bad. And so
Mm.
with acne clients, you see this excess of bacteria in usually acne clients because their skin is dead skin cells are getting built up, and then there's collecting sebum, and the bacteria begins to feed. But it actually is good bacteria, and then it just starts to grow in excess. So it's really about finding active ingredients that bring a balance to the skin barrier versus stripping it away, destroying it. And so, yes, when you put preservatives in products, it does have an impact on the skin barrier, and it also is making the active ingredients not as active.
Mm. What are your thoughts on retinol?
I don't use I use a retinol derivative, the Mr. Lulu skincare. It's so the skin makes retinic acid, and then there's retinaldehyde, and then there's the retinol. Um, and I do like vitamin A in the regimen because it increases skin cell turnover. It helps to keep your skin more youthful and all the good things, right? But as far as retinol, I don't use it or prescribe it in my treatment rooms. I don't. I think that everything we apply to the skin, we have to think about the toxic overload on the body. And I think that there are some really great alternatives to not have to use the retinol. I think, again, retinol is one of those things where if you're using one of these prescribed creams in your regimen, it's going to create this effect. But once you quit using it, your skin looks really kind of lifeless. And I'm not a scientist, but I work with the skin and I see that when clients stop using it, their skin, it looks like it's just been depleted.
Mm.
And so, like I said, I can't speak to that on a scientific level, but it's definitely what I'm seeing from in the natural eye.
That's
So,
really interesting. So for like a natural derivative, you were saying, is that like Bucachol or is there something else that you're using?
so the Mr. Lulu makes a powdered serum. It's retinaldehyde and azelaic acid, and both are compatible with the skin barrier. But
Mm.
the retinaldehyde is more bioavailable. It doesn't cause the irritation that a retinol would, and it really helps to kind of, with those clients who are dealing with cystic acne, deliver some active ingredients. They're going to help reduce those symptoms while working on the inside. It's also a powerful skin brightener, and it's anti-aging. So it is a really great alternative, and a much cleaner source.
Okay, I'm so interested in checking this out. Yeah, because I gave up retinol years ago because of just the endocrine component, right?
Yeah.
I was seeing more about it being an endocrine disruptor, and I'm like really just trying to be really good about my hormones. And so it's really interesting to hear of alternatives that are maybe not as well known as Bucachal that might even be better. I'm very fascinated by that. Then with
Yeah.
like chemical peels, do you use them? Do you like them? Do you hate them? I'd love to hear your tea on that.
Well, you know, I, for a while in my treatment room, I was always learning and trying to understand from the perspective that God was giving me. I did offer glycolic pills, and I really liked the effect they had on the skin. But the thing I didn't like was that they would they could so easily go wrong in the sense that could create a lot of healing that was needed, a lot of downtime. And what I've learned in my experience is that clients don't do that well with downtime,
Hmm.
especially when you're working with teens or people who have to go to work tomorrow or go back to school. Um, so I was very tempted to not engage in chemical pills. However, the Mr. Lulu line has kind of changed that for me. It's truly just such an innovative approach. The formulator of this line formulated for some big name companies and now has kind of created something on his own that is really much more true to who he is as a person and his holistic lifestyle. And it's just brilliant. Like he's come out with two pills that are preservative free, work with the skin
Wow.
barrier. So when we do have these clients who are dealing with these issues like cystic acne, and we're wanting to give them some relief in those symptoms while we're addressing these root conditions and not be causing more havoc to their hormones, we can do that. So, I'm not opposed to more advanced treatments. It's just got to fit that, that it's got to be in that, it's got to fit, right? It's got to not be working against the body. That's kind of my whole thing is like, I don't want anything in my treatment room that works against what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah,
And
this
yeah,
oh, I would say this is just really fascinating. I've never heard of like a cleaner peel. This is amazing.
excuse me. Yeah, it is like, honestly, every time I think about it, I'm just like completely fascinated. It was like in 2020, I got a Instagram message from Mr. Lulu, and he's like, "Hey, I've got some products." Well, my treatment, my back bar was like apple cider vinegar, whole food powders. I mean, it was
Wow.
pureed strawberries. Like it was very clean, and I had started to experiment with like ascorbic acid powder and hyaluronic acid powder, and they would just wad up in my hands, and I didn't know what I was doing. And then he sends me these products, and it was like a probiotic powder cleanser, a vitamin C serum, and I'm like, this is genius. This is exactly what I needed. And every year, every since then, he's just continued to come out with products that have just really blown me away. But it just, it shows that like people are starting to shift to cleaner, wanting cleaner services, cleaner products. And that's really just driving these really innovative thinkers to create even better products, that it's kind of raising the bar. And man, it's really been a game changer for my treatment room to be able to incorporate some of these products. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think more than ever. Obviously, a lot of people still use the toxic stuff, but cleaner at least has been a huge conversation lately. I'm even seeing people who are not at all on the crunchy holistic side opting for a cleaner alternative that might be fragrance free or free of certain chemicals and just kind of I think that information is becoming more readily available. So I'm excited to see how companies respond to that because we do need to see a lot of brands following suit, I think. I mean, even yesterday I was going for a walk and there were two girls ahead of me and I mean, far, like probably 20 feet ahead of me. And I was walking where behind them so far and because of the wind, the perfume was like gagging me, right?
Yeah.
Like I was like I was gagging. I'm so sensitive to toxic perfume, especially since detoxing. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this does make me sad though because as horrible as I feel, these girls are wearing this 24/7. They're using these products 24/7 and they're young. Oh my gosh, I just really want to see the industry shift to be a little bit more understanding, well, a lot more understanding of what is going on and what needs to change."
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that, and it's You're right. As you continue, like you detox from those things, you become so sensitive. It's like my kid can bring home a t-shirt that was washed in a house with like some kind of laundry detergent, and I'm like, wait, what's in here? It literally is that overwhelming. And when you're kind of in the middle of it though, you don't recognize it. I've
Hmm.
been there. And yeah, we really need to start teaching these young girls, that there are side effects from using all of these different um, products. It's like the whole trend on TikTok is get ready with me, and it's using like 15 different products. You're talking about your life while you're smearing on all these creams, and they all do it, and it's fun. It seems harmless and innocent, but it truly does have an impact. You're putting these things on your skin, we're laying all these products on, and you have to remember these products were made to penetrate because skincare, and so they're getting into the skin, and then we put makeup on it, which is almost like sealing it off, right? And we're just our skin is just kind of absorbing this all day, and then it has to filter through the rest of the systems in the body, along with the environmental pollutants, and along with what we're eating and the things that we're thinking, and it's just like toxic overload. And when you're young, we don't think about things like this as much, but I'm seeing 15, 16-year-old girls diagnosed with PCOS. And we're seeing, women in their 20s who are struggling to get pregnant. And I'm not saying that it's entirely the fault of their personal care products, but I'm saying it is part of it. And, my biggest thing too is like, what are we teaching ourselves by using all these products and like chasing beauty rather than recognizing that it comes internally. And when you do start to change your thoughts, you'll see that you minimize everything. You minimize what you're putting on. You minimize, like, my makeup routine shifted. I mean, I just started to really value my true looks and my features that I have, and um realized that I didn't need all of that. And it's just kind of like naturally came in the process of learning to love myself, not just seeing that there's no need for it.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it is crazy when you're insecure, like how makeup is almost like a hiding mechanism, or like, the thick eyeliner, which if that's what someone, how they express themselves, this is not shame in any way, but like I remember I used to wear, the thick wing eyeliner, super dark brows, like super snatch contour, liquid foundation, all these things. And same, I've like for at least day to day, especially when if I'm not like at a black tie event, have really minimized and just tried to focus on products that make me feel glowy and pretty colors, and just really accentuating my natural appearance rather than hiding behind something, and just wearing a lot less, which honestly in practicality is really nice when you can spend 5 minutes doing makeup versus an hour. That's really honestly so great. But I actually, this is really interesting too, because I had a friend who has a teenage daughter say to me that one time she was putting on makeup and her daughter was like, "Why do you put on makeup?" And she couldn't answer because she was like, she didn't want to say to feel beautiful, right? Because she didn't want to send that message to her young teenage daughter who didn't wear makeup at the time. I think at
Mhm.
this time she's probably a preteen. She was like, I was at a loss. Like, why do I put on makeup? So for you, like in your perspective, how do you balance wanting to do those things that make you feel beautiful and feminine, like makeup and hair and skincare, etc., but also embracing your natural beauty and not trying to hide behind anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, I one of the things that made kind of led me into the beauty industry from my nursing background was makeup. I I always, since I was a kid, I loved doing makeup. And I think there's a difference in applying makeup, being creative, and just loving makeup, and trying to cover yourself up, or you know um, disguise yourself or change your features because you're telling yourself, my brows are too thin, my lips are too small, my eyes are too squinty. All of these things that you're telling yourself, or telling yourself to believe that you are not attractive. And that is teaching you to not love and value yourself and see like the true beauty that actually does exist when you just learn to recognize it. And so I'd say, I love makeup. I love playing in makeup. I love teaching other people how to enhance their natural features with makeup. I think, like, it's just something I enjoy, but it's like, am I using this to cover something up or I'm just having fun? You know, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, what's the mentality behind that?
Yeah, I think that's really great. Yeah, because I mean, personally, I love makeup and hair and girly things, but yeah, also have no problem going outside with ponytail and no makeup. And
Yeah.
I think maybe some of it's also like, are you at a point where you feel comfortable in those scenarios? And I think it's okay to want to be put together and feel feminine. I mean, women have been wearing makeup since the Old Testament, right? Like kohl on their eyes and some form, they put oils and different things on. So I think there is this like innate feminine desire to beautify and pamper, but I think we've lost as a society the meaning of it, and it's become this like need for perfection, and we see that in the cosmetic industry as well. I'm also very curious for you as an esthetician who focuses so much on holistic beauty. What are your two cents on just this phenomenon we're seeing of like the social media face of all these girls getting, the lip filler, the cheek filler, the Botox, all these different things that kind of are all the same procedures?
Yeah, I think it kind of it's definitely a lot of marketing. You know, there's so much marketing in the beauty industry to tell us that these things make us more attractive, or, to we need to fight aging. We need to, there's just these little belief systems that are being formed behind all of the marketing. And I think too, it is, if I have teenage girls, and it is very difficult for them, especially at these younger ages, to be able to set themselves apart based off of who they are versus what everybody else is doing. And, now seeing the industry kind of target these younger women for, Botox being prevention, or fillers, changing the face shape, it all kind of really feeds off of their insecurities. And, there are other industries that feed off of insecurities on women that, we would shame, right?
Mhm.
And so it is time, I think, to change the narrative and to teach young women how to embrace, the true beauty within them, how to, like I said, learn their God-given identity. Because, like, until we know how or who we are, then we're going to keep chasing these things to try to fulfill us, or try to change us, or make us who we think that we should be. And once you begin to really see that a lot of what we're telling ourselves are truly lies, they're not truth in any way, shape, or form, then we become so much more at peace with who God created us to be. And I think that is true not just in the beauty industry, but as a whole. Right now, one of the things that the Lord has been speaking to me a lot about is just bringing His children back into their God given identity. And as He does that, we're going to see such, people walking in such authority and power, because what the enemy has done is he's shamed us. For so long, he's shamed us, and he's told us that we are less than, we're not wanted, we're less desirable, we're all of these things. And if you have someone constantly in your head telling you that, you're going to want to sit in a corner and just crouch down. But if you
Mhm.
stand up to those lies and you begin to allow God to light up the dark and share his truth, you're going to see yourself rise up bolder, brighter, more efficient than you've ever been. I came from such intense self hate that it almost made me take my life. I mean,
Oh.
I was at a point where, I would hurt myself. I just had so much shame and depression, and just, God kind of stepped into that dark place, and he began to light it up for me. And he said, all the things you've been telling yourself, those are not true to who you are. You've never been that person. And it's been these circumstances that have broken you and made you believe these lies. But if you hold on to me, I'm going to set you free from this. And so it was like this process of unbecoming everything that I had told myself or the enemy had told me I was based off the decisions I made out of hurt and pain and then stepping into this new identity. And I haven't really changed the way I looked. In fact, I've gotten older, but I love myself more than I ever have. I am more secure than I've ever been. And as a result, I'm more in alignment with my purpose.
I love that. And I think alignment, confidence and alignment makes someone glow in a different way that you can't manufacture. They just make someone so attractive because they're self-assured, they're walking with the spirit, they're open, right? Versus when you're insecure and closed off, you could do all the things to beautify yourself in the world, but there's something so unattractive about that like deep insecurity and something so attractive about somebody who is just walking in alignment in this assuredness, and it radiates something that's you can't really put a finger on it,
Mm.
but it's like it's beautiful. It's what God had intended.
Yeah, and it's right. It's what you say. You can't replicate it. But if you think about all the things, the trends in the beauty industry, glass skin, gluey, glowy, dewy skin. You think about, high cheekbones, and these are all things that you recognize in healthy individuals.
Yep.
But you have to live healthy to actually get that. You can't inject it. You can't, fake
Yeah.
it. It's something that flows from inside and it just can't be replicated.
Because you can tell when it's fake versus when it's natural. Well, and now it sucks. I think some people who really just are naturally like have these natural features get accused a lot of getting work done because everyone else does. But I mean, I know even when I was in my young 20s, I came in contact with a lot of people in like the aesthetic world, and I was seeing a lot of women getting preventative Botox. I was seeing a lot of them get cheek filler and like different things like that. Obviously lip filler, but I was seeing a lot of cheek filler too. And they were like, it's great because you don't really have to wear makeup because you have this natural contour, da 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 da. And I still have a round face, but I had a really round face. And I also wasn't very healthy at the time. I was vegan and I had really messed up cortisol and hormones, and it
Mm.
reflected in how I looked. Even though I was very skinny, I was puffy. But it wasn't until I got into my animal-based diet, started prioritizing lymphatic drainage, like doing my facial cupping and gua sha and massage and recovery. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, I don't even need these things because naturally my face leaned out, stopped being puffy. I can see my cheekbones better and the dimples and like all these things. All of a sudden, I was like, wait, I never needed filler
Yeah.
to have that kind of
Mhm.
contoured face that I wanted. I just needed to get healthy and get my body out of fight or flight. And I think a lot of women don't realize that they can actually get these results by being healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot healthier way to get these results, and it makes you feel a lot better in the process, and you learn so much too. You you learn so much about yourself and your health, and one of the things that the Lord has really been speaking to me is that my people perish from a lack of knowledge.
Mm.
And it's like we get saved, but then we need to come into this alignment with the Holy Spirit, walking in knowledge. And part of our process, our journey is healing, but it's also sanctifying, it's purifying, it's cleansing, it's receiving wisdom and knowledge so that we can live more healthy, more abundant lives. And it's nice to not only look back and see, like, as I'm getting older, that I mean, I'm still changing in positive ways due to the journey that I'm on. Like,
Yeah.
I'm getting older, but at the same time, like, I'm not prioritizing the things that I did, so it's not affecting me in the sense of criticizing and critiquing every line in my face. And um, and I think that's something I was posting about the other day. It's just like with this mindset, it's also like this chasing eternal youth. There's a lack of wisdom in society,
Hmm.
because we really need mature vessels and mature spirits to be able to really pour out. And so it's so much deeper than the skin, the beauty
Yeah.
industry. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're seeing this, but I think with this like youth obsession when it comes to look, I'm seeing this like I don't know if this is a real word, but I'm going to use it anyways. But it's like infantilizing of grown adults. I see people who are my age, I'm 27, who are saying that if they were to get married, they'd be a child bride. or girls who in their 30s who are still in their party phase, right? All these things. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, you're so young, don't settle down. Like this is like you're a kid. I'm like, you're not a kid. We're adults, but I think we've glorified youth so much that now we're seeing grown adults acting like college students, and it's a lack of spiritual maturity.
Yeah.
And I walk, my husband and I were walking, sometimes we'll see people our age who are running around talking like teenagers, and I'm like trying not to judge, it's not that, but it makes me sad for society because these people are missing out on what this season of adulthood has for them because they're so scared of it. What advice do you have for people who have that mentality where they almost have like that Peter Pan syndrome and don't want to grow up?
Well, I would say you're missing out on the most beautiful seasons of life. I've my kids are 18 and 16 now, and it's been so much fun raising them. But um, I and I don't know if it's maybe because this is the first time in my life where I've really gotten to live for myself in the sense of not taking care of so many other people. But I feel like the wisdom that has come with age, and I'm still young, the wisdom that has come with age and the peace that has come with the surrender has just made everything in life so much more abundant. And so, I think that a lot of times we get lost in this idea that the best years were behind us,
Mm,
but it's not true. And we can't live like that. We just can't live in the past and thinking that things are finished, because as long as you're here, you still have purpose.
yeah.
And beauty from ashes, right? New mercies every morning. Like, you still have time to become, get into alignment with that purpose, and recognizing, that the things that are keeping you believing that are just distractions from really experiencing true peace and true joy that are not dependent on circumstances or relationships or anything other than God.
Yeah, that's a beautiful perspective. And I think really important. I don't know about you, but I don't ever want to be 21 again. I don't want to relive the turmoil that was trying to figure everything out and like having an undeveloped frontal lobe and all these things, right? Age brings priorities, like clarity, peace in a lot of ways. And it's beautiful. I think that people really do need to embrace it. So I love your perspective. What is your current health and wellness goal?
Um, right now I am working on just really getting my diet in alignment. I have, the life that I live and the work that I do, there's a lot of spiritual attack. And for me, that comes a lot on my health. And I see that, and it's also a result of some open doors, through some habits that I still have. Like, we have all the information in my house. We do raw milk and, grass fed eggs and regenerative farm beef and all the things. It's been getting my mind to a place of making that shift, and like keeping it, not dabbling here and there, and things I know that my body doesn't like, or so that's kind of where I'm at, is like it's for me just continuing to make adjustments there that are going to in turn make more adjustments in my hormones. I um when I was in my early 20s, I actually had a thyroid specialist tell me that my thyroid needed to be removed. And I was still in that nursing frame of mind, do what the doctor says. And I allowed that to happen. And for a little while, it seemed better, with just taking the medicine every day. But very quickly, I realized that that was not the choice I should have made. But there was no chatting or discussion. There were no what ifs or what could be. And I never, in the frame of mind I was in, just being young and naive, but also in the medical industry, never thought to question any of it. It's like, it's going to be better, right? Um, that taught me a lot. It taught me a lot. And it also
Yeah.
taught me to really advocate for my own health. Um, but yeah, so it's just like a constant trying to balance, because I am one of those people who, when I get emotional, like I tend to reach for the things I shouldn't.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I think that's really important too. Really important lessons that you've learned, and you're setting an amazing example for your kids as well, which is just amazing. Where can people find you, whether social media or if they want to come see you in person?
So I have, my Instagram page, Sacred Beauty underscore by Bria. I also do share some stuff on TikTok. I have a new website that was supposed to go live last week, and it's just been one thing after another. So it should be going live tomorrow. I do coaching training for estheticians. I do offer virtual consults for clients. And then if you want to make the trip to Starkville, Mississippi, then you can see me in person. I have a little guest house where people can stay and things like that. I welcome all here, but there is a little bit of a drive to it because there's no airports within, I mean, there's like a couple hours the closest airport.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this chat. I've learned a lot, and I'm really excited to see what you do just in the holistic esthetician space. It's so interesting because I think what you're doing in some ways is very groundbreaking and forward thinking, but in other ways is very ancestral, right? And is very back to what we're supposed to do and back to nature. So
Yes.
it's really, really cool to see, and I am really excited and looking forward to seeing more people step into what you're doing and step into that God-given calling of helping people heal holistically and just really find that inside out beauty. Thank you so much for joining today, Bria. All right, you guys, if you love this episode, please make sure to give us a 5-star review. It's a great way to keep this show free for everyone. It's helped us to grow. And I also just really encourage you guys to share this episode to your stories. Tag Bria, tag myself. Let's get this word out there and help people find more holistic beauty from a spiritual, emotional, and physical level. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will chat soon.